Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H virtual event space. Today we are learning about lighting a cyclorama wall. Sponsored by Nanlite. Huge thank you to them for hosting today's event. And for the nitty gritty, the goods, the reason you're here, I would like to welcome the FilmLaab team, Parker and Mitch. What's going on, guys?
Hey, good to be here, man. Thanks for having us on.
Super excited to be here.
Anybody that comes on screen looking that good, sounding that crispy, it's always welcome. So
Hey,
you guys are dressing the part here. So it's always confidence inspiring. It's like you're logging in. You're gonna see like, hey, we're gonna get some lighting for a video, photo, whatever, and you show up looking like this. It's confidence inspiring to say the least. So I'm gonna
We
throw
got
that
to
out
flex
there.
a little bit.
yeah, when
You-
B&H calls, we try to answer, and then especially doing it with Nanlite, it's like, come on, you got to do it right.
that's a win-win combination here. And I do, as we had said, we talked about it a little bit before we went live, that it's not just going to be for the psych wall. Where people are going to learn stuff here that they can take. Because I got a lot in my living room, but I don't have a psych wall in my living room. So I'm guessing I'm going to learn some stuff if you don't just have a psych wall just laying around.
That's right, man. Yeah, we're excited, and it's a new addition to our space, and so being able to lean into that, and we've always been renting out, but now being able to have our own, being able to practice lighting it and just trying new techniques and stuff, it's already been a ton of fun for us. So yeah, hopefully we can share some stuff that's going to be able to help people from a lighting perspective, and also just help people realize like you can do this.
Awesome. Well, the one thing that's not helping them is me talking. So I'm going to exit stage left, turn it over to you guys, and I'll see you guys in a bit from Q&A.
Okay, appreciate it, man. All right, guys. Well, to kick things off, I'm going to share my screen, just kind of walk through a little slide that we have prepared. Just kind of wanted to talk to you guys again. Today is more about lighting, and we're partnering with Nanlite. They've been an incredible partner to us and our team at FilmLaab over the past, this majority of this year, and just great people, great products. So to dive in, just to introduce who we are a little bit, I just wanted to help you know what is FilmLaab. So FilmLaab, we are a Salt Lake City-based production company. We specialize in commercial work for many different product-based brands. We started back in 2021 and have worked with a bunch of different brands that you might recognize, like Jordan Brand, DJI, Sephora, Dime, the Utah Jazz, and many others, which has been a lot of fun. In the past 12 months, our company has hit our big goal that we had of a 7-figure revenue. So made over $1 million of revenue this year, which is really, really big for us. And we have the team size of about 12 of us right now. So obviously that's really exciting. And the goal is not to flex at all. It's more to just let people know that this is attainable. We started this company a little over 2 years ago, and be able to hit these goals to work with these brands. It is attainable, and you can do it too. And so it's been a really great experience. Jumping in, who am I? I picked up a camera for the first time in 2013. I mean, before that, I made your average family videos, things like that. But from a professional sense, picked up a camera in 2013. In 2018, started my first production company, sold in 2020, and it was an incredible experience. After selling and getting acquired, I worked as director of content and media for a unicorn-sized business, managed a $5 million budget for our team, and worked on many different campaigns, activations, events, things like that. And since then, I felt the call of the entrepreneurial spirit, left that, and started FilmLaab in 2021. So the role I generally play is that of a creative director, working with our clients as well as our internal team to establish the look, the feel, the goal that we have, and how we want to approach pulling off a project. And that's been really great. And then whenever I'm on set, I generally do some directing every once in a while. Parker can attest. I like to get my hands on a camera and get dirty with it. But it's a ton of fun. Absolutely love it. The person you should be most excited about talking to today, though, is definitely Parker. I'll let you take it away, man.
That's a tough act to follow. But yeah, so I'm Parker, and I have been filming things since I was literally like 4 years old. I have three other brothers, and we would just make movies all day long for fun. And I've kind of been in love with it ever since. And so I went on to study film in high school, and I also went to film school at DSU in St. George here in Utah. And then I left film school to go be the director of content for a fitness icon named Steve Cook, He has over 1 million followers on Instagram and YouTube. And so I was in charge of all of his content for TikTok, Instagram, YouTube for a little over a year. And then I had been following Mitch since high school, looking at his content, being really inspired by it. And it felt like it was time for a change. Instead of just doing one thing, which was fitness, I felt like I really wanted to expand and grow. So I FilmLaab posted for a job opportunity. I applied and I ended up getting it. So I joined the FilmLaab team in March of 2022. And now I've worked my way up as head of production, and I'm the senior director of photography at FilmLaab, as well as the lead editor for a lot of the bigger projects. So it's been quite the journey, and I've learned a lot about filming, about lighting, and even just from a year ago, I feel like I've learned so many more things. So I hope that we can help you guys too.
Yeah. Well, you can run circles around me these days, man. So we're lucky to have you on. But moving on, I want to, obviously we talked about some of our accomplishments, things like that, because I want you guys to know that we do have experience and we are confident and comfortable with this. But I want to go back to where we started, right? We didn't always know how to light things professionally. We didn't know how to use artificial lighting to put together a scene, really anything like that. Really, we shot with natural light only. And there were times where people would be like, hey, do you feel comfortable doing this? I'm like, oh, no, I'm a natural light photographer. I'm a natural light filmmaker, which, I mean, is not a thing, especially in film. But, I'd say that. And it was rooted in the fact that I was insecure. I didn't actually know how to utilize artificial light. I was overwhelmed by everything I had to learn. And I also really prioritize cameras, and I prioritize lenses and some of the more exciting gear. Lighting, especially early on in your career, it's not like you're excited to drop $3,000 on a bunch of lights. You want to use that for lenses or some editing techniques or plugins or whatever, a better camera. And so I didn't really understand the importance of it. But as I continued to develop and I started seeing more and more of the limitations of only natural lighting, then I started realizing, okay, when I'm indoors, I obviously need to have a key to light the subject. Oh, if I need to make them stand out from the background, I need to have some sort of edge or rim light on them, and, so on and so forth. And as I continued to develop, as, doing some DP work and directing, I started realizing how important it is to understand lighting. And one of the big restrictions for a lot of people also is not having the resources, which again is something that all of us have run into early on in our career. So let me just dive in really quick and talk a little bit in my perspective why lighting is important. Parker, feel free to jump in at any time here. But why is lighting important? Well, really, how you utilize light in your scene has way more impact on the final result of your image than even your camera or lenses will have, right? You can have a red with incredible cine lenses, the whole kit and caboodle, great looking actors, whatever. But if you don't have proper lighting source, you don't have your scene set up well to be able to facilitate that light and tell that story and really evoke that emotion, then you're kind of up a creek, right? It doesn't matter how good it is. On the flip side, I think we've all seen those YouTube videos of guys who will shoot something on their iPhone or on something, 720p, some old point and shoot camera. And when it's lit well, the whole piece feels elevated, even if the gear used to pull it off wasn't actually, top of the line or really anything to write home about. And so again, lighting is really everything. Bad light is going to equal a bad image. Good lighting is, again, something that really evokes that emotion and points the viewer's attention to what you want. If you're trying to highlight, somebody's feelings, maybe they're being overcome with sadness or emotion, a lot of times you're probably going to see their eyes. It's going to be darker, more shaded, things like that. Versus if you're trying to light something and make them happier, it's a totally different feeling. So anyway, good lighting. And I think Parker's actually taught me this. I don't know who talked about this, but good lighting really isn't something that most people would notice. It's something in a lot of instances that feels natural. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Absolutely. We'll get into more examples later, but we did this piece for the Utah Jazz where we were shooting a drummer on a court, and we wanted to shoot it mostly on the Red Monstro. We were super excited. And then we had some C70s as B and C cams. And when we dove into the footage, we ended up liking more of the C70 footage than even the Red Monstro stuff. So not that the C70 is a bad camera, but it just goes to show that it's not all about the camera. It's not all about the lenses. If you have really good lighting and it's dialed, then that's what's going to be the most important thing for your image.
Yeah, and part of the story that you didn't touch on was, I mean, the reason we couldn't use the Monstro was because we were having so many technical difficulties with that freaking Ronin Pro. You know, we were having so many issues that finally were like, all right, we're going handheld on the C7 to get these last shots. Our clients are looking at us like, are you guys going to get this done? Anyway, pull it together and you can't notice a difference because the lighting's so good.
Absolutely.
I love it. Well, maybe dive in a little bit about these different examples you have with different scenes and things like that.
Absolutely. So lighting's important to understand because it could be really easy to get pigeonholed into like a 3 lighting setup or whatever, but each piece needs to be lit extremely differently. You'll watch television shows or movies. Comedies are lit far different than dramas. Comedies are usually a lot brighter, higher key, whereas dramas, there'll be a lot more contrast, a lot more shadows, darker tones. So it's important for each project to understand the tone and the vibe that you're going for, and also to find the style that you prefer. Some of my favorite cinematographers, Roger Deakins and Greg Fraser. Roger Deakins tends to, let me share my screen really quick and show you guys some examples. Obviously, they both do different things, but Roger Deakins tends to go for a more naturalistic look. It was actually Roger Deakins where I learned that if he feels like he's doing his best work, then you don't even notice like that he's using artificial light at all. He wants it to look as natural as possible.
So I want to give you credit for that thought, but you know, Roger Deakins, I guess you got to give credit where it's due.
I mean, I'll take it. I'll take anything that Roger Deakins says as my own. But he tends to do a little more naturalistic look, whereas Greg Fraser, who actually has said that he takes a lot of inspiration from Roger Deakins, tends to go with a more colorful look, and it's just a little bit of a different style. So it's important to figure out your own style as well to be able to move forward and figure out what kind of DP that you want to be.
Yeah. And I should say one of the big things with finding your style too is going to be just experimenting and mimicking other people, seeing what they're doing, seeing what you like about what they're doing, and then trying to adopt that and practice it and try it on your own. That's been a huge part of what I believe has helped us is, you know, sometimes it doesn't help to look at other people and you need to do your own thing and not get caught up in the comparison game. But there is something really cool about taking a movie, you know, screen grabs from a movie and trying to recreate those looks, finding YouTubers or other filmmakers that you want to emulate, and just trying things. I think that's one of the biggest lessons that we're going to share, and hopefully you take away today, is becoming good at anything is a practice game, and putting in the hours and putting in the time. And the more scenes you light, the more lights that you've utilized, the more challenges and obstacles that you've had to overcome with making a scene look beautiful, you're going to just be able to be that much more confident, that much more comfortable with doing that again in the future. So kind of moving forward, something I do want to highlight, because we are going to talk about some rules, is it is okay to break the rules. Oftentimes, the best stuff you're doing is going to be breaking the rules of what you said. There's things like the rule of thirds. You learn that with framing, and then I've seen more and more interview setups where instead of giving a bunch of front room in somebody's face inside of a screen or a frame, they're putting somebody's face right up to the edge of the screen and having a bunch of space behind. It's interesting. It's different. It has a totally different feel. So sometimes you learn a rule to understand it and follow the basic principles, but there are times where you start breaking it to be able to get a little more creative, to be able to make something different. So we're going to talk about some rules today, some best practices or things that we have done. But again, there are always times where we break these exact same rules, and you should too. So moving on, just kind of wanted to talk about Nanlite, who really is helping sponsor and put together this video. We have utilized Nanlite exclusively for the past 6 or so months. Before that, we used a variety of other brands. And we have just fallen in love with Nanlite for several different reasons. One, the build quality of their products is amazing, and they did not ask us to do this and plug them this hard. I'm just saying it because
We just love them so much.
they're just great people to work with, partner with. Their team is so invested in creators becoming their best selves. But then again, the products themselves are great. And we had opportunities to work with Nanlite, and we were talking with a large rental production house here in Utah, probably the biggest one here, Enigma 3. And they were saying that they 10 out of 10 times prefer Nanlite over other comparable companies because they found them to be the most color accurate with Kelvin, some of the best build quality, and they're really, really happy with their products. So overall, that's what we've been using. And like Parker said, and he's going to show some examples here, we utilized Nanlite for our Utah Jazz campaign. We had to light an entire scene on the actual court, build the whole thing out to make it look all beautiful. We had to do different fan vignettes off to the side too, and it was quite the process. So anyway, we just want to like showcase a little bit about how we've used Nanlite lights in the past to do some more lifestyle branded work as well.
Absolutely. This was for the Utah Jazz for their 50th year anniversary. And so, like I was saying before, we went to the Delta Center and we ended up shooting with this drummer. And it was really fun to play with all of these lights. We had a couple Forzas. Actually, we had 3 Forzas. So we have a spotlight over here to the right, shooting down, another one right here, and then another one right here shooting down as well. And then we have a bunch of these Pavo tubes, which I love so much, that you can turn RGB. And so we turned them purple since that's the Utah Jazz color. And it ended up looking really moody, dark, vibey. We loved the shoot so much. And we got nice lights on the close-ups, nice harsh lights on his hands. It was a really fun project to do. And Nanlite just made it so easy. Their spotlight attachment is probably my #1 favorite thing that we own. If I can, I bring it out for every single shoot because it's just so much fun and you can do so many different things with it.
I mean, check the spotlight behind me. Like, how cool is that? Yeah, it's so convenient. And because we love working with them so much, and maybe you could scroll forward a little bit and let's showcase the bar scene, because I thought those visuals were really, really cool to be able to look at too. But again, we lit every single one of these scenes with Nanlites. And here, obviously we had a nice little fill that we were bouncing the Forza off of, and it was kind of bouncing back and filling in their faces. You can see kind of on the left side of the screen on their faces, a little bit of that edge light where we're using the Pavo tube to get that purple and those Utah Jazz colors in. Anyway, it was just beautiful. And being able to have a company and like products that kind of span everything you really need as a filmmaker was huge. And one of the things that we felt like we didn't have access to was more of like a light LED panel. And so that's kind of when we decided, all right, well, we want to, create our own cyc wall, and we want to have our own setup there with kind of a whole grid and everything. And so what we did is we started talking to Nanlite, and when they told us that they were coming out with these new PavoSlim 60Cs, they're also going to be coming out with 120Cs soon too, if they're not already out. But we knew that we wanted to build out our cyc wall grid with that. And so we were really excited about that. We were able to get our hands on a handful of them, and we were able to kind of start putting together our cyc. And maybe Parker, if you want to take a second, I probably shouldn't have shared my screen and swapped back, but maybe let's showcase a little bit of the unboxing, the products that we have, all that stuff. You could talk through it.
Yeah, so they sent us a bunch of these 60Cs. It was so much fun. I was like a kid on Christmas opening up all of these, but we got them all up. We had just finished the cyc wall literally the day before, and look how small that form factor is. They seriously are so small, and I was blown away with how lightweight they were, how easy they were to set up, how bright they were. I'll skip ahead a little bit so you can actually
also don't mind our ghetto basement. This is literally this basement. We're in the bottom of an elementary school that was built over 100 years ago. So behind Parker there, you see like a big boiler and furnace that's like 100 years old. So heavy we can't get it out. So anyway, we kind of built our cyc wall into this like interesting looking space. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
It's so funny. But yeah, you can see how, like, look, that's another one of our coworkers, Tyler. That's literally how it comes out of the box, and all you need to do to set it up is pop it out like that. It's so easy to set up. They're so lightweight. All of them can be controlled through their Nanlite app, which is incredible, especially when they're mounted to your ceiling and you can't get to the control boxes. So you can see that they have their app. I can be changing all of the colors for all of them at the same time. You can create different scenes. So for different companies that we've been shooting with, we've already built out different scenes for each of them. So as soon as they come into the studio with their product, we go to their scene, we turn on their colors, and it's so easy to just get shooting immediately instead of taking so much more time to set up the lights and dial them in. So we ended up clamping them up into the rafters. We ended up using 6 of them for the back, as you can see here. Let me find it. Yeah, so we had 6 of them up here, which when we just hung up one, I was a little concerned. I didn't think that they'd be bright enough. And then as soon as we got all of them up, it was fantastic. It was super even on the whole entire cyc wall. There was no issues with being too bright. And it was so nice for them to be RGB, and also you can change them, the Kelvin on them, so you can make it warmer, you can make it cooler, and you can do any color you want with RGB. So this was our very first shoot, breaking in the cyc wall. Literally took us like an hour to get them all set up, and then already we were shooting client work with them, and it was great. So this was a little bit of the BTS of us shooting it. And then I'll jump to some of the final results, just so you can see how even the lighting is, how nice it was to be able to pick their brand colors. So yeah.
And the client was stoked on it too. Like
Oh yeah.
it was so great. And you know, it's so nice. And what we're really excited about is having a cyc wall. Again, before we used to have to rent everything out. We were spending, you know, honestly, we probably spent 15, maybe $20,000 last year just in studio rentals alone. And so for us to be able to build this ourselves, shout out to Mike who just slaved over it, and then be able to now light it with Nanlites and be able to have all the flexibility we do has been really, really big. Actually, I'm going to show you guys. Check this out. Okay, so if you're seeing my screen right now, watch. I can change the background. I got the iPad right here. And I can just literally come in and tap any color I want and change it to whatever I need. And it illuminates the entire space just beautifully. And so that ease of use has just made it a no-brainer. Not having to set up lights over and over, just having that grid has been so great. So let's
jump. The app is intuitive too. Like a lot of those apps can be a lot more difficult to work with, but the app is super user-friendly, super easy to set things up really quickly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I didn't set it up, but I was able to walk in and turn it on and figure it out really quickly. So been loving that. So wanted to kind of go through today 4 lighting tips for the studio. This is kind of a way that we approach it, what we've been able to see. So we're going to talk about controlling your lighting, playing with color, utilizing texture, and then just taking the time to experiment and try new things. So going on to our first one, which is controlling your lighting. It is so important, especially in a studio type scenario, to have consistent lighting throughout the entire experience. And you want to be able to control the look, the feel, everything about it. We have a kind of a funny example. Parker, talk a little bit about For All and kind of our experience before being in a natural lighting studio and trying to capture these photos for their web.
Yeah, this was last year around Black Friday. They were coming out with some new clothing, and we were doing a bunch of top-down photos in a studio. We had a big paper roll, and we did have a key light, but the problem was on the right side of the room, there were huge windows all the way up to the ceiling. We didn't have enough flags to flag it off, and so what ended up happening is, for those top-down photos, you want them all to look super consistent across a website so that all the photos aren't looking so different. And it was extremely difficult in post to make them all look consistent because over the course of the day, the outside lighting was changing. It was such a pain for us to have to try and match each shirt to the other one next to it. It ended up taking like 3 or 4 days for all of those photos just to get them all looking consistent enough. And even then, we weren't happy with the final product. So it's so important if you can control your lighting, get rid of all ambient lighting from windows, turn off the house lights, anything else that will muddy up your image, because you want to be in full control of how your image turns out. If you have other ambient sources messing with your key light, mixing with Kelvin temperatures, and adding things to your image that you don't want, it makes it so much harder in post to get the final look that you're going for. And so it's really important to block out that ambient light and then also utilize modifiers to shape your light. Do you want it more soft? Do you want a harsher light on them? It just depends on the product that you're shooting, or on the focus and the tone that you want to go for. And then also controlling your levels. You want to have it, well, so like an example is we took some headshots the other day, and if you have fairer skin like me and Mitch, especially on a white cyc wall, it can be really easy for us to fall into the background. And so you have to end up controlling your levels, making sure that what you want to be the brightest part of your image is brighter. We had to darken the background so that the subjects pop off the background better. And then it's important to know your tone. If you want something to be brighter, or if you want them to fall into the background, or if you want them to pop off, just control your levels.
What more can I say than that? Amen. Moving on to kind of the next topic. Tip number 2 would be playing with color. And obviously you guys saw some of the examples of what we did with that pink backdrop for that skincare brand. But I think getting creative here, I've always been very much a natural tone person, kind of shooting and creating things the way you would expect it. But as we started incorporating with the Pavo tubes and now these 60Cs, we've been incorporating more color into our imagery, and it's made it pop. It's made it stand out, which, as we know as filmmakers, especially now with social media, it has never been more crucial to be able to get people's attention and to hold it. And so, having colors that pop, experimenting, playing with that a little bit really makes a huge difference. And here's an example of how we did it in more of a natural type of setting, right? We had more of like a darker brown, kind of more gold tones in certain parts that, again, this was on a white cyc, but utilizing these RGB panels from Nanlite, these 60C PavoSlims, it was so easy to be able to help make the subject pop, have the skin tones how we wanted them, as well as the background. And really, I think the imagery came together beautifully. I mean, look at that. They were very, very excited about how it came together, and it was well done. And for this, we were trying to make sure the skin tones looked natural, that they looked vibrant, bright. And it was really, really easy to do with this scenario while lighting the cyc in a way that helped make them pop from the back of it. So that was kind of a cool experience and experiment in the way that we utilized color in maybe a more subtle way, not noticeable to the natural eye, but it did make a huge difference.
Absolutely. And it just helps with brand recognition as well, because we're able to use what the brand wants, their colors, so that the whole video feels like a seamless package instead of just on a white background like everything else.
Exactly. So moving on to tip number 3, wanted to talk a little bit. I guess I should talk about with this again, color evokes emotions. And so we've talked a lot about Kelvin. For those who maybe don't know what Kelvin is, it's the color temperature, right? And so the colder and more blue it is versus the warmer and more, yellow it is. So anyway, that's kind of, there's like a whole scale called Kelvin, where you're kind of messing with different numbers in a range there. And so that really does influence the mood and feeling. Something Parker pointed out is, Nike, generally, or things with maybe a more serious tone are going to have cooler imagery, right? You look at Succession, you look at some of these TV shows, it's going to be cooler. It's going to be more serious, it's going to be more intense, maybe more sad. in certain areas, where maybe a romance piece or things that are more happy might be on the warmer side of things. And so even just shifting a color temperature really can evoke certain emotions and really play into what you want your audience to feel or notice. So on this next one, and Parker, you can be pulling that up in a second, but is utilize texture. And we love doing this in like a lot of different ways. And I know you especially love it with the spotlight and gobo. So I'll let you talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. This has quickly become my absolute favorite thing to do with lighting. What I mean by texture is different shapes of light. So you can do this in a few different ways. Like we said, we love that spotlight attachment from Nanlite where you can shape your light in different ways. This was just without any modifiers in it at all. We just made it a circle to kind of highlight the product, but you're able to do a lot of different things with it. So it has little arms on it that you can change the shape of it as well. So we would do like slashes moving across the product and across the background. And then there's also these things called gobos, which are different shapes that you can put in front of the spotlight. Let me find the example. And you can mimic trees, you can mimic blinds. So like this example right here, we mimicked blinds going past to do a little bit of like a fake time lapse sort of thing. And it's just nice because it adds a little bit extra. If you look at a lot of movies, it's not just all one soft light. They're going to have different things coming through windows, coming onto people's faces. It just gives more depth to your image, and it makes it more realistic as well when you have these type of things, because when we're sitting in our living rooms, there is hard light coming through the windows, getting on the couch, getting on your arms. It's not all this big soft light all the time. So it's just a different way to spice up your videos. And for me, it's been some of the most fun to play with these things and see what different things you can do and get creative with it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And also, I mean, I think it just gives your image character. It makes it unique. You know, I mean, if everything's lit softly and you're not introducing other elements, number one, like you said, it's not that interesting visually. And number two, yeah, it's just not going to stand out. And so we've also done things where we've reflected lights off of other things. You know, there's acrylic mirrors that can create really interesting backdrops and things like that. I mean, we've even done a lot of scenarios where we even just bounce light off of the ceiling. It's diffused and coming down. But as far as texture and stuff, yeah, we've really loved exploring that more, and especially on a cyc wall, right? The purpose of a cyc wall generally is to have a seamless looking sheet of color. And these examples we have here are all kind of one color, but we've done, you know, multicolor examples where maybe one half of the cyc is, you know, gold, the other half is more of like a red, and kind of creating this color palette that's kind of more interesting and visually pleasing to the eye. But in a lot of scenarios, it's very seamless. And so what is a way that you can spice it up, give it more character, even though it's obviously in a studio, give it a little more depth? And that is with adding some more texture, with gobos, with reflecting it off different things, spotlight attachments, things like that. So as you can tell, big fan of that technique. We've been doing it quite a bit lately. So now kind of moving on to tip number 4, which me and Parker can talk about all day, which is just experiment, right? It's very easy to start doing the same things over and over, right? You just light the cyc evenly, you add a little key light to help your subject pop from it, and then you just shoot and go from there. And probably one of the most dangerous things for a filmmaker to do is to get comfortable, to get complacent and not feel like you need to continue innovating, you need to continue practicing. That is a fallacy, right? Every single time that we at FilmLaab or any other filmmakers I know have started trying new things, pushing past and experimenting beyond the obvious, they have gotten awarded with more opportunities, with more work, and also they're just proud of themselves. Like, it's, again, just don't get comfortable, continue to try to experiment. And we have a really, really great example from our friends. They're at Moto Studios. This was lit by our friend Tyler Larson. Anyway, very, very talented DP. And I think they spent 2 days setting up this lighting example and these spotlight attachments. And look, I mean, they had them like automated, so the lights were moving and all focusing in at different points. Just the way they really did something different. And you see this, they pretty much blacked out the cyc. And they had a lot of texture with haze in there. They added rain. They added a lot of motion to the lights. Obviously, the subject was just on a stationary bike, but through camera movement, through adding different elements and things like that, and with the lights moving, it really gave the illusion of a lot of movement, a very high intensity, high energy piece that really just stands out. And like, I look at this and I'm like, okay, we've got our work cut out for us to get to this point. But, I feel like, seeing this is very inspiring, and they're really pushing things to a new level.
Absolutely. I mean, this could have been done bare minimum. They could have just had it with a white background, a little soft key light on him, and shoot some handheld camera movement around him and called it a day. But they took the time to make it a little bit more artistic, put some more time into it, automate some things with the lighting, and it just helps elevate the piece and elevates their own brand as well. It's really, I agree with you, it's probably the most dangerous thing for a creator to get comfortable and complacent. Because for me, I feel like that's when I get the most burnt out, is when I feel like I've learned what I can learn, and this is just the filmmaker I am. But when I feel at my best, it's when I'm trying new things, experimenting, failing sometimes, but you're learning, you're finding your own individual style, and you're growing as a filmmaker as well. And it's just so important. We can't stress tip number 4 enough. Experimenting, breaking the rules, trying your own things, and being okay with failing, because when you get complacent, you die.
Yep. And failure is going to happen often enough. We fail more than we win, but that means we learn a lot faster than most. And so an example around that, and we don't have any visuals tied to this, it kind of just came to my mind. I'm thinking about Jordan, right? The second event that we shot. So we shot a piece for Jordan, an event for Jordan, and like Air Jordan, Jumpman 23. And it was a very cool experience. Our first time we shot for them at NBA All-Star Weekend here in Salt Lake City. Incredible team, incredible experience. They did a really great job. They brought 23 VIP members, gave them this whole cool experience. And it was our job to capture it in an elevated way that they could share on their socials, they could put out, and make people very, very excited about the opportunity to be part of the Jordan family. And the first time we did it, we did everything by the book. We did exactly what they asked, didn't do anything outside of it, because we didn't want to overstep our bounds. We didn't want to come across as if we had kind of our own ideas or thoughts, and we didn't want to just like step on any toes. Really, at the end of the day, we were just excited for the opportunity to work with them. And the piece came together, and it was fine. Like it was still a solid piece. It accomplished everything that they asked us to. It met and even exceeded their expectations. They were totally happy with it. Happy enough, in fact, that they asked us to come back and shoot a second event for them in Boston. So we went to Boston, and we were putting together a piece, an experiment, or an event for Jason Tatum's new shoe and his Zoo colorway, which was really, really cool. Again, all these VIPs getting shoes, getting jerseys, getting gear, and then having dinner and going to the Boston Celtics court, which is called TD Garden. And we were able to go out beyond the court. We actually got to meet Jason Tatum, and Parker and I were the ones who shot it, and Parker was the one who edited it, did a wonderful job. And before we went into this, we said, okay, let's get the things that they asked for, but let's take a little bit of time and think outside of the box. How do we experiment? How do we push the boundaries of this even more? How do we take matters into our own hands? And everything we tried and experimented with, we have a scene where we were having a shoe stomp down, and we did a motion tracking of the shoe stomping down. We had these passes to be able to go down on the court before the game. And we said, you know what, if it worked before the game, let's see if it worked during the game. We walked down, we were able to get some shots from sideline, be able to shoot the players on the court, and everything we did to try to take it to the next level, whether it be with time lapses, the way we pushed in on things, tracked things, included a lot of motion we just got for ourselves. And in post, we said, all right, we're going to take this into our own hands. We chose a song that we were hyped on. We put together a first edit, including all of the different techniques and things that we wanted to implement in this. And they came back absolutely blown away, because we were able to take their vision and say, now, where's our expertise? What are the things that we're naturally good at? What are the ideas we have? And as we experimented and we tried and put those things in practice while we were shooting and then in post-production, they came back, Jordan Brand, one of the biggest brands in the world, and we're absolutely blown away and so excited. The amount of revisions was probably a quarter of what they were in the first video. And so that really is just a little long-winded, but I just wanted to help express to you guys how important it is to experiment, to bet on yourself, to try new things. And we've done that before and had it fail and just had to go back to the original way they wanted it done. But this is one of those times where it absolutely paid off and was a big win. So, all right, last tip and bonus tip. Again, I want to bring this up because we mentioned it before, but you need to break the rules, right? We've talked about how to separate your subject from the background, utilizing texture, different color tones, things like that to evoke emotion, you know, experimenting, whatever. But at the end of the day, and this is close to experimenting, but be willing to break the rules. All these rules are really just dependent on the style that you're going for. And these rules are ultimately meant to be broken. And some of the greatest DPs I've ever seen are the ones who break the rules and do things differently. So that's some of the best advice that I can give. And that has really, really paid off for us in our experience. But that's kind of what we have prepared. That's kind of what we wanted to talk about. I know there might be some questions, whether it's from the B&H team or from people who are joining in live, but I cannot stress enough how great it's been for us to be able to have these PavoSlims, to be able to light our own cyc wall, and just have such a great setup for us to be able to utilize whenever we need to do client work, internal stuff, everything. It's already been game changer.
Awesome. Thank you guys. We're beyond help, just so you know.
Good. That's what we like to hear.
Great. we need way more help than anybody could offer, but we will get it started with the Q&A. Brady joining us on YouTube asking if you have a grid or barn doors or anything on the 60s above the cyc. Why or why not?
We don't even have a grid because or anything. We just have the built-in kind of barn doors with the diffusion on the front that is just shining down because we want the light to spread as much and as evenly as possible. And frankly, when I even looking at that, and Parker and I were talking about this earlier, we think we even need to back them off. They're kind of up high, pointed down, and we need to pull them back a little bit so they're casting more evenly on the wall. But that's kind of how we've approached that. Would you agree with that, Parker?
Absolutely. Yeah, we wanted the biggest spread possible so that one light was bleeding into the other seamlessly instead of boxing it off to be so harsh on the edges. So no grid, but diffusion on there.
I'm going to throw out a question here because it's always debated, argued, different schools of thought. Proper, or let me not say proper because you just ended on break the rules. Your thoughts on distance, because I see people going, it's like, okay, they're standing on top of the curve. And obviously you get that, you don't have room for the light to fall off. Then you have people who are way off to kind of get that separation. Is it a case by case? How do you guys handle, or how should people go into handling distance from the curve or anything that's going to be a wall behind them?
Well, I mean, go ahead, Parker.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. I guess it is kind of a case by case scenario, especially depending on the size of the cyc wall that you have. With the Moto one that we shot in earlier, it's a huge one, so you have a lot more space to work with.
Has 3 walls.
Yeah, 3 walls, whereas ours is much smaller, only 2 walls. It also depends on your lens. If you're shooting on a longer lens, they can be further from the curve because you're not getting so much of the edges of that cyc wall. But if you're shooting on a super wide angle and you don't want to show the edges, then I usually have them closer to the curve.
And I should say too, people are really enjoying BTS. People enjoy context to where things are shot. And so, especially even with social media stuff, things like that. I mean, we've seen it where people have a paper roll out in the middle of nowhere. You know, you see the C stands, you see the paper roll, and you also see context to the fact that, you know, they're in the sand dunes or something, right? I actually feel the same way about the cyc wall. I think there are times, again, where the rules are meant to be broken. I like showing the top edge of the cyc wall. I like showing the grid above at times. I like being far back enough that you have context. They're on this two-walled cyc wall and they're doing something interesting there. And so, again, I don't think there's a right way to do it. I think, what is your goal? What do you think is going to help the piece stand out? Obviously, if this is something for a website, we want it to look seamless, we want it to look beautiful, then yes, keep the edges out, keep the curves out as much as you can. But with social media, the things that people want to see, they want context. They want something that feels genuine. And I think showing context to that really does help. And we've actually had a lot of success with that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I actually love that. I love it when other people do it. When I do it, I'm like, no, this doesn't. No, some they do it better. Anybody, it doesn't matter who's doing it. It just always looks better when someone else does it, taking those risks. Austin joining us on YouTube asking, what's your favorite light from Nanlite?
Dang, that's hard.
If you had to roll with just one light, you don't know what the job is, a secret job, you got to bring one light. What would it be?
For me, I think it's the 720. It's so bright, and you have the different Kelvins on there too, which has been so amazing. Before we had the 720, we just had a key light that was only 5600. You couldn't change the Kelvin on it. And I have been using the 720 exclusively for my key light. I use it so much because I can be changing that Kelvin to match the tone of the room that I want and the lighting that I want. And it's just so bright to fight with a lot of other ambient lights when you need to.
Doesn't it have like a magenta tungsten shift too?
Yeah, you can change
Yeah.
the tint as well. So you can make it a little more green. You can make it a little more magenta, which is so awesome. I love it so much.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that light too, just for the sake of being unique and being different. I mean, run and gun. I love the Pavo tubes. It's just, they're so handy. The fact that they're RGB, they actually put out quite a bit of light, and whether they're actually in the frame or outside of the frame, they're very visually interesting. And so I enjoyed that. But I'm really excited actually about the 120Cs that they're that are coming out too, because they're going to be even more powerful than these ones we have on our cyc. And I'm excited to see how we can take that, not only utilize it here in the studio, but also in other lifestyle and brand situations. That's going to be cool.
All right, we're going to re-engineer that question, get a little more specific, because we did have a question come in from Talmadge asking, what light would you suggest for a first-timer's key light?
Great question.
We have, I'm trying to remember. I mean, they have quite the array of lights. I believe they have like a 60.
I think they do have a 60, and I think we have a 120 as well. And it's actually way brighter than I expected it to be, and super affordable and really small
Forza.
too. Yes, Forza.
Yeah,
So
those are
that's
great.
probably what I would say.
Yeah, and I think we also have a 200, which is really great. And on that, we're able to mount it to the back of a spotlight. We can put a little softbox on it. It's very lightweight. It's very easy. So easy to pop up and down. It's not going to require multiple people to manhandle that thing. So I do enjoy their smaller lights because they still put out a ton of light. But yeah, the Forzas are kind of the go-to, and I would look at kind of the smaller lighting options there.
On a typical job, how many lights are you guys often using? I know I always word this question the wrong way. I'm like, how many lights can you get? And it's always like, well, none. I can use natural light and I can bounce and do this. For the work that you guys have done, now I'm talking like commercial work, because I think that's like commercial grade sets the standard. Most commercial jobs, how many light sources do you guys find that you're using on average?
I always do overkill. I always bring like every single nan light that we have, but on average, I'm probably using 3. But if I have my way and I have enough time, I'm bringing like 4 or 5 to the table if I can.
Yeah, I was gonna say 3 to 5. And it really just also depends on how many people we have on set, how much time we have, and how complex the lighting scenario needs to be. You know, our friend Brady just put out a video about you only utilizing one light and all the cool looks you can get with it, right? And so you can get away with one light, you can get away with natural light, but to have the best possible results, I mean, I'm loving all the lights I can get my hands on. And having a gaffer and a great DP like Parker being able to team up and partner for here's the look we're going for, here's how we're going to pull it off, and being able to kind of watch that all come together. It's so nice.
Speaking of Brady and light, Brady's asking if you could use only hard light or soft light forever, which would you pick?
Brady's asking the hard questions.
Why would he do that to us?
He's recording all of this, and he's gonna just wait for you to contradict yourself one day, and the replay's coming out.
I mean, I'm gonna be this guy because I'm sure I'm kind of going between the lines of what he's saying. I would, if I couldn't have any diffusion, I go with a hard light because I could still bounce it off of things to soften it up if I need to.
That was
That's
my
probably what
answer
I'd go
too, but I
with.
felt like that was cheating.
That's kind of copping out, huh?
We're gonna let it slide. I mean, it's an answer, and if that's what works, then that's what works.
That's how I would approach it. But I mean, definitely hard light. You're gonna get a lot more. It's gonna be a lot more visually interesting, and you're gonna have a lot more variety, most likely.
And texture.
Do you guys, is it like building out? I mean, we always hear about like building out a light scheme. Is that how you guys approach it? How do you guys go in? Like, what's the mindset going in when you have the visual direction and it's like, okay, this is what the vision's going to be. How do you go about, what's the first step for building out the light scheme?
It's a good question. I like to have the final version of the script and know the tone and the feel that the client wants to go for before I start thinking about the lighting. It's really hard to start building out how you want to light it without that information. It's so much more helpful when you know the tone that they're going for, what the overall piece is for, and the vibe that the client is really trying to go for. And that's when I can start simultaneously thinking about how I want to light it as well as the shot list at the same time, because that helps with being able to make the best image and the best product possible. Without knowing the script, without knowing the tone, it's pretty impossible to know how you're going to light it, and you end up just kind of doing the basics without taking it in any interesting way.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think pre-pro is actually one of the best ways to get the best product and the best result, because if you're planning out beforehand, you know what the location's going to look like. You have an idea of the talent, their skin tones, what they look like, how we want to emphasize that, you know, maybe utilizing contrasting colors, you know, famous orange and teal, right? Things like that. Like, how are you going to utilize that? And if you're able to know that beforehand, it's going to make everything easier. But more often than not, especially with social media, especially with how quickly things are needing to happen, we have to cowboy it a lot, right? So we're showing up, we don't know the exact room or situation or scenario. We understand the general goal of the piece. We have all the lights on hand that we can possibly handle, and then we just dive in and try to problem solve on set. And I think that is one of the biggest and most important things also as a filmmaker, is to be able to be a great problem solver and be able to handle pressure on set and adapt, because I have never had a production go 100% the way I had planned. You know, whether it was lighting issues, whether it was planes flying overhead messing up our sound, an actor who didn't have their script totally memorized, a product that was damaged, whatever it is, right? There's always things you're going to have to work around. And so being able to be adaptable and be able to, you know, do all the pre-pro you can, and then get there and be able to just make it work and adapt in your situation. I think that's been really crucial for us.
Some great real world advice right there. We do have one final question, but I gotta sneak something in because you did say the magic word, social media. So I'm curious, when you guys are on a production like that, is it worked in? Is it you guys handling, you know, because everybody wants stuff. You have your long form, or you have your, say you're doing a commercial job, but then it's like, oh, hey, we want to package in something for social media. Whether it's you guys handling that or not, are you guys shooting separate content for, or are you framing up separate shots for the social media? Are you kind of just repurposing what you're shooting for the project and then repurposing, and specifically in terms of like everybody now is viewing video vertically.
Yep.
How do you guys, how is it being handled out there in the industry?
Well, it's always every filmmaker's worst nightmare to say, okay, we want 16:9 and 9:16, and so really it's handled one of two ways. One, we just say we can shoot it horizontally and then crop in for the vertical 9:16, but we can only really prioritize one aspect ratio to optimize it the most and make it the best. It's going to look the best horizontally, and we can do that. And as you crop in, you're going to lose a lot of context to the place. It's not always going to be as high resolution, whatever. And so we set that expectation in the beginning. But the best case scenario is when we have talked about it beforehand. We treat it like totally separate deliverables, right? So we're here to shoot this main hero piece, showcasing the product here. Well, maybe they also want, because the thing that's really big right now is BTS of the shoot, BTS of the product, BTS of whatever. So we will usually have somebody on set that is their job to capture with that social media perspective. Or if it's the part of the camera crew, once we're done shooting it horizontally, we reframe up. Even if it's line for line, sometimes we have them read the exact same thing. But more often than not, the horizontal stuff is going to be longer form. The vertical stuff is going to be shorter form. So sometimes we even have separate scripts for it. But I think just the more intention you can have with social media, the ways you need to utilize hooks, the ways you need to switch camera angles, make it very visually interesting, leaving room for captions, different call outs, things like that. Being able to plan and anticipate ahead of time makes a big difference. And I should say on a lot of productions, we even bring on our own BTS guy to shoot everything that the crew's talking about, our experience doing that, even talking to the client, showcasing the bad things that happen. That's very interesting to people. And, we have an entire YouTube series called Lab Takes where we're just telling our story and breaking that down. And that's made a big difference. So I think intention from the get-go is how you're going to get the best social media stuff and be able to accommodate your client's goals.
Awesome. Can we just normalize turning phones? Like,
Please
why can't someone just, who are the influential people out there? Just come on. We used to have like the sidekick and dating myself
I feel the
here.
same way, man. No, I mean, have you seen those hats that say make videos horizontal again?
Oh no, I need one.
I need to send you one, man, because I feel that way.
Dude, and it's like perfect aspect ratio. It's not even like we have a square phone and it's like, okay, well, BlackBerry, it's not really. No, the aspect ratio is right there.
I know. I mean, this is how we see the world, right? But I mean,
Yeah.
unfortunately, as long as we hold phones like this, it's just going to be that way. But once we maybe start getting more of that AR stuff in, go Tony Stark with it, then maybe we'll be able to really prioritize horizontal again.
I think Apple just needs to design an iPhone with irremovable handles on the sides, and we're stuck.
That's a big
just an idea
right there.
Man, engineering degree over here. One final question for you guys coming from Tyler joining us on YouTube. Where do you look for inspiration for your work?
That's a great question. Recently, I've been finding inspiration from a lot of different places, not just film. So music has been a really big one for me lately, where I listen to a song and it helps me visualize a story in my head better. Because I felt stuck a little bit when I was just looking on social media or watching movies and feeling like doing the comparing game where I'm just like, oh, I could never do that, or I'm not in that spot yet. It was getting really frustrating to me. So looking outside of film sometimes has been super helpful for me to then get inspired to do my own stories in film.
Love that. Tough act to follow. Now I get mine from two. Number one, I'm a dad. I got two wonderful kids. Thank you. And seeing the world through a child's eyes is very interesting. Things that I totally take for granted and I don't think are interesting at all. I went on a hike with my daughter, and we would make it maybe 3 steps before she'd say, and then she'd reach down and grab a rock, a little pebble, and she'd find something else, a dandelion. And to me, those were so normal and obvious and uninteresting, but to her, that perspective and looking at it through a different lens and seeing it as interesting, something she didn't understand, she wanted to feel, she wanted to throw, she wanted whatever, was actually really, really inspiring to me to take a step back and to not take everything I understand for granted, and looking at it in a different way is huge. And then the other aspect that actually really helps me creatively is approaching creativity from like a different angle, right? If I'm always on set, I end up doing the same things. But when I have to pull myself out of that and I have to start writing a script, I'm going to start looking at it differently. I'm going to start finding other ways. I'm feeling more inspired. When I have to get into the editing bay and I'm trying new techniques and different things, that's going to be very inspiring to me. When I'm sourcing music or whatever it is, attaching and different parts of the creative process to what I'm doing every day actually really helps give me a lot more context and feel very creatively inspired.
I feel like both of you guys were really good in school when all the answers were already given and you couldn't just be like, oh, this person, like, man, you guys are like banger answers. And then whichever one answers first, the other one's like, okay, well, no, I'm going to give a completely different banger answer. I would have just been sitting here like, yeah, it's a great answer. Wow. He nailed it. He covered everything right there.
I hope my high school teachers are watching this.
Seriously.
I'll give you a gold star. That was great. It's like, man,
Finally.
and I think Mitch, you got the parenting thing down. I'm over here, getting my son inspired by watching the Buffalo Bills Instagram account. He's 6 years old, probably the wrong thing to do.
Hey, don't worry. I mean, my daughter, we've watched a lot of Star Wars. We watched a lot of Cinderella. So, we're getting our reps in with screen time too.
That's great. That's great. And Parker, what you were saying about, the non-cinema route. I think we all feel like it's like anyone who does film, everyone who doesn't do film thinks people that are in like that film or cinema or video world, it's like all you do is sit there and watch movies all day. And it's like, oh my God, if Martin Scorsese didn't do it, nobody, you can't do anything. It's like you have to watch just only classic films. And if it wasn't nominated for awards, it doesn't matter. So it's great to see inspiration come from other areas of life.
Absolutely. And it helps you tell different stories. You can't just keep making videos about videos or movies about movies. You got to tell different stories. And so you got to go out and live your life and try different things. And that's what helps me.
Yeah, trying to duplicate something Martin Scorsese did. That's just a losing uphill battle, dude. So yeah, find your own inspiration and do your own thing.
I gotta tap myself out here. I could go all day. These are the days when I really love my job. I want to thank you guys because this was just awesome. A ton of information in the background. Sorry, he waved. I know that's one thing I love. I gotta digress real quick. Utah, my favorite state in the country. People will wave to you. They'll say hi. You'll be driving. I mean, I was in Sandy, standing on a sidewalk, and they didn't even have a crosswalk there. And people came like 60 miles an hour, and they just slammed on their brakes to like wave me in front. Will never ever happen in New York.
Not in New York, no way,
Complete sidebar. So I don't know. I'll see you guys when I can convince my family to move out there, and yeah, we'll make it happen.
Man, let's go skiing. Let's go shoot some stuff. We'd love it.
There we go. I'm all for it. We can do a little north down to Moab. Just cover the whole state.
Oh yeah.
We're in. Right. Yeah, there's a lot of variety here. So any filmmakers want to come hang out, our studio is always open.
There you go. Danny, we're moving the event space. Start packing the boxes. See you on Monday.
Come on out.
Awesome. Huge thank you to you guys. And of course, the Nanlite team for making this whole thing happen. There's a ton of information, something that people can rewatch over and over. Ton of nuggets of information hidden in here. So for everybody out there trying to do your thing lighting, you have it right here. Free education on the event space. Huge thank you to the FilmLabs team and Nanlite for making this happen. That's all we got for you in the books today. Another edition of B&H Virtual Event Space. Catch y'all next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.